The skeletal system, particularly the bones, deserves to be understood not as inert stones within the body, but as living tissues with distinct features, essential functions, precise structures, and a fascinating process of development and growth. A bone is formed from a mixture of organic and inorganic substances. Biologically, it is a tissue, belonging to the primary group of connective tissues, but because its original connective tissue form has been greatly transformed, it is classified as a specialized connective tissue. About 1/3 of bone is organic material, providing elasticity and toughness, while 2/3 are inorganic, granting rigidity. Among the inorganic substances, approximately 85% is calcium phosphate and about 10% is calcium carbonate. The organic part is rich in collagenous fibers, and together with the minerals it makes up what is called the matrix of bone. In childhood, bones contain relatively more organic material, which makes them flexible and resilient, while in adults the higher mineral proportion gives them greater hardness. Bones perform several vital functions. They form the basic framework of the body as solid structures, protect the internal organs, and serve as levers when muscles contract, enabling movement. Inside their cavities lies the bone marrow, where blood formation or hematopoiesis takes place. This marrow can be red, producing blood cells vigorously in infants and young children, or yellow, rich in fat, which gradually replaces red marrow in many bones as a person grows older. Bones are also active reservoirs of minerals. 97% of the body's calcium is stored in them, and they play a key role in maintaining calcium balance. The composition of bone includes cells, known as osteocytes, and the intercellular substances that surround them. Like other connective tissues, bones have relatively few cells and a great amount of intercellular substance, which here becomes the bone matrix. Surrounding the outer surface, except for the joint areas, is the periosteum, a thick fibrous membrane richly supplied with sensory nerves, making it highly sensitive to pain. Beneath the periosteum lie osteogenic cells, which can form new bone when growth or repair is needed. At the inner surface, lining the marrow cavity, lies the endosteum, a delicate fibrous membrane. Blood vessels enter the bone through tiny openings called nutrient foramina, allowing circulation into its interior. In terms of visible structure, bones consist of two main parts: compact bone, which forms the dense outer shell, and spongy bone, in which fine trabeculae, or bony struts, create a network of small spaces, making the inner bone appear like a sponge. In long bones, the central shaft is called the diaphysis. The ends are the epiphyses, and the region between them is the metaphysis. During growth, the metaphysis contains the epiphyseal plate, a thin layer of cartilage where new bone is formed, allowing lengthening of the bone. When growth ends, this plate is replaced by bone tissue and leaves behind the epiphyseal line as a mark. Within the diaphysis is the marrow cavity, which contains bone marrow. At birth, all marrow is red, but around the age of 7, fatty yellow marrow begins to replace it, starting at one end of the cavity. By adulthood, red marrow remains active only in certain sites such as the skull, vertebrae, sternum, ribs, pelvic bones, the shoulder girdle, and the proximal ends of the humerus and femur. Bones can be classified in several ways. By shape, there are long bones such as the humerus and femur, short bones such as the carpal and tarsal bones, flat bones such as the scapula, parietal bones, and ribs, and irregular bones such as the vertebrae. In addition, there are sesamoid bones, small seed-like bones embedded in tendons near joints, which assist the action of muscles by acting as pulleys. The patella, or kneecap, is the largest sesamoid bone, though smaller unnamed sesamoid bones are scattered throughout the body. The formation of bones, called ossification, begins during the fetal stage. At first, soft tissues such as cartilage or mesenchymal tissue create the basic shape. In intramembranous ossification, typical of flat bones like those of the skull, mesenchymal tissue forms a flat membrane, and bone gradually develops in its central parts to protect the brain. At birth, some areas are not yet ossified. These soft membranous gaps are called fontanelles. As the child grows, they close and become sutures, which are fibrous joints between the bones of the skull. In endochondral ossification, seen in long bones, the basic shape is first made of hyaline cartilage. Calcium salts then deposit, and the cartilage is gradually replaced by bone. In long bones, this process begins in the middle of the diaphysis, at what is called the primary ossification center, and later continues in the epiphyses, where secondary ossification center. Cartilage, along with bone, is one of the solid structural materials of the skeleton. Like bone, it belongs to the family of connective tissues, but it is a specialized form that has been altered to provide unique mechanical properties. During fetal life, much of the skeleton is formed in cartilage, which later ossifies into bone. In adulthood, cartilage remains only in certain sites, at the articular surfaces of synovial joints, in the anterior portions of the rib cage, in the larynx, trachea, bronchi, the nose, the external ear, and in small patches at the base of the skull. Unlike bone, cartilage has no blood vessels or nerves within its substance. Its surface is surrounded by a fibrous covering called the perichondrium, from which limited repair and regeneration can occur. Because it lacks its own circulation, cartilage has a low metabolic rate, regenerates very slowly, and once established, it tends to persist for a long time. Smooth yet tough, and often elastic, cartilage is placed in regions of the body that must bear pressure, resist stress, and disperse external forces. Cartilage is composed of relatively few cartilage cells, or chondrocytes, and large amounts of intercellular substance. This substance contains collagen fibers and the matrix of cartilage, enriched with glycoproteins made of protein and mucopolysaccharides. These molecular components give cartilage its strength, smoothness, and elasticity. There are three principal types of cartilage. The first is hyaline cartilage, the most abundant in the body. Its matrix is rich in collagen fibers, with the same refractive index as the ground substance, making the tissue appear glassy and translucent bluish white. Hyaline cartilage forms the epiphyseal cartilage plates between the diaphysis and epiphysis of growing long bones, where it plays a key role in lengthening bones before being replaced by bone tissue. It also forms the articular cartilage that covers the surfaces of bones in synovial joints, providing resistance to friction and smooth movement. Other examples include the costal cartilages connecting ribs to the sternum and the cartilaginous frameworks of the larynx, trachea, and nose. The second type is fibrocartilage. This variety contains an abundance of collagen fibers embedded in relatively little matrix, giving it the toughness of dense connective tissue. Fibrocartilage is found where both resilience and shock absorption are needed, such as in the discs of the temporomandibular joints, the menisci of the knees, the intervertebral discs between the vertebral bodies, and the pubic symphysis. It not only cushions impact but also helps fit articular surfaces of different shapes together. The third type is elastic cartilage, distinguished by the presence of abundant elastic fibers in the matrix. This makes the tissue extremely flexible, with a yellowish tint. It is found in structures requiring both shape and elasticity, such as the auricular cartilage of the external ear, the auditory tubes, the external acoustic meatus, and the epiglottis, which guards the entrance to the larynx. Where bones meet, they form joints or articulations. A joint is simply the point at which two or more bones are connected, but their structures and functions vary widely. Fibrous joints are the simplest. They are immovable, joined directly by fibrous connective tissue. Syndesmoses, such as the radio-ulnar syndesmosis in the forearm, are slightly separated bones linked by ligaments. Sutures, like the sagittal suture between skull bones, consist of short fibrous connections and may be flat, squamous, or serrated depending on the edge shapes. Gomphoses are the peg and socket joints of the teeth, where roots are anchored in the alveoli of the jaws, like nails driven into wood, and these are also immobile. Cartilaginous joints allow slight movement and are united by cartilage rather than fibrous tissue. Synchondroses are temporary unions where bones are joined by plates of hyaline cartilage. They may later ossify, as seen in the sternal synchondrosis or the spheno-occipital synchondrosis at the base of the skull. Epiphyseal plates are also examples of synchondroses during bone growth. Symphyses, on the other hand, are permanent fibrocartilaginous joints in which thin layers of hyaline cartilage cover the articular surfaces, bound together by fibrocartilage in between. These include the intervertebral symphyses, where vertebral bodies are connected by intervertebral discs, and the pubic symphysis. Finally, there are synovial joints, the most mobile of all. Here, bones are separated by a true joint cavity, enclosed by a capsule of dense fibrous tissue lined with synovial membrane. The cavity is filled with synovial fluid, a lubricating liquid that reduces friction and nourishes the articular cartilage. The capsule itself is often reinforced by ligaments that prevent excessive displacement. Because synovial membranes and joint capsules are richly innervated, these joints are highly sensitive to injury. Within a synovial joint, we can identify several key features. The articular surfaces of the bones are covered by smooth hyaline cartilage, called articular cartilage, which distributes loads and absorbs shocks. Synovial folds and villi may extend into the joint cavity, increasing surface area and vascular supply. Some joints, such as the temporomandibular joint, contain an articular disc, a plate of fibrocartilage that divides the cavity into two separate compartments. Others, such as the knee, contain articular menisci, crescent-shaped wedges that partially fill the cavity to improve congruence and absorb stress. In certain joints like the shoulder and hip, articular lips or labra surround the socket, deepening the cavity and improving stability. Occasionally, fat pads are also found within the cavity, cushioning movements, and within the knee, cruciate ligaments pass through the cavity itself, further stabilizing the joint. In this way, cartilage and joints, together with bones, provide the structure, resilience, and mobility that define the musculoskeletal system. Cartilage grants smoothness, shock absorption, and flexibility. Joints provide the meeting points where bones connect, ranging from immovable sutures to freely moving synovial articulations. Together, they allow the skeleton not only to support the body, but also to move with strength, precision, and grace. Muscles are the contractile tissues of the body, and together with bones they provide both posture and movement. Structurally, skeletal muscle is organized into bundles of fibers, each bundle surrounded by a connective tissue sheath. Around the entire muscle lies the epimysium, the outer connective covering. Inside, the fascicles are separated by connective tissue known as the perimysium, and each individual muscle fiber within a fascicle is enclosed by the delicate endomysium. Skeletal muscle has some distinctive characteristics. It is composed of striated fibers, hence it is often called striated muscle. Each fiber is long and cylindrical and contains multiple nuclei. Because it is controlled by motor nerves, skeletal muscle is voluntary. We can contract it at will. Contraction of a muscle fiber begins at the neuromuscular junction, where a nerve impulse arrives. The neurotransmitter acetylcholine is released and diffuses across the junction, binding to receptors on the muscle fiber membrane. This stimulus triggers the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release calcium ions into the sarcoplasm. As calcium floods the interior, cross bridges form between myosin and actin filaments, and the filaments slide past one another, shortening the fiber. Contraction continues as long as calcium remains in the cytoplasm. Once calcium is actively transported back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, the cross bridges break down and the fiber relaxes. Muscular tissue itself is a contractile system designed to move parts to which it is attached. It is composed of specialized cells capable of shortening and lengthening. Muscles are anchored to bones by tendons, and they are connected to one another by ligaments and connective tissue. There are three principal types of muscle tissue. Skeletal muscle, attached to bones, is under voluntary control. Its fibers are long, slender, and striated with alternating light and dark bands, and it contracts in response to nerve impulses. Smooth muscle, in contrast, is involuntary. It forms the walls of hollow organs such as the airways, the digestive tract, and blood vessels. Its cells are spindle-shaped, lack striations, and are controlled automatically. The third type is cardiac muscle, found only in the heart. Cardiac cells are striated like skeletal fibers, but branch and interconnect in a network, joined end-to-end by intercalated discs. This structure allows the heart to contract rhythmically and as a coordinated whole. The human body also contains 5 major cavities that house vital organs. The cranial cavity is enclosed by the skull and contains the brain. It is continuous with the spinal cavity, which runs within the vertebral column and houses the spinal cord. The thoracic cavity, or chest cavity, is surrounded by the rib cage and contains the heart, lungs, esophagus, trachea, and the great vessels. It is separated from the abdominal cavity by the diaphragm. The abdominal cavity is lined by the abdominal wall and contains most of the digestive organs, as well as the kidneys, adrenal glands, pancreas, and spleen. Below it lies the pelvic cavity, which contains the bladder, rectum, and internal reproductive organs. Taken together, the muscles and the cavities they surround form the dynamic architecture of the body. Muscles generate movement through contraction, and the body cavities protect and organize the vital organs. This cooperation of structure and function is what allows the body to stand upright, breathe, digest, circulate blood, and carry out all the motions of life. The nervous system is the body's great communication network. It receives stimuli from the environment, processes them, and sends out appropriate commands to muscles and organs. In this way, it regulates nearly every function of life. A simple pathway of transmission begins with a stimulus. The signal is carried first by sensory nerves to the central nervous system, where it is processed by association neurons in the brain and spinal cord. From there, motor nerves deliver instructions outward, resulting in a response. The nervous system as a whole includes the brain, the spinal cord, and the peripheral nerves. At the structural and functional core of this system are neurons, the nerve cells. Each neuron has a cell body, dendrites that receive incoming messages, and a long axon that conducts impulses to the next cell or to a muscle or gland. Billions of these cells interconnect to create the vast circuitry of human thought and action. The central nervous system, made up of the brain and the spinal cord, weighs about 1.3 kilograms in the adult and contains roughly 15 billion neurons. The brain is the command center, integrating the sensory information sent from the sense organs and producing awareness, thought, judgment, reasoning, memory, calculation, and language. From the brain also come the commands that direct voluntary muscle activity. The cerebellum, located beneath the larger cerebral hemispheres, plays its own vital role. It fine-tunes muscular movements and ensures balance and coordination. The diencephalon, deep within the brain, regulates essential autonomic functions such as body temperature, blood pressure, visceral activity, and even the cycles of sleep and wakefulness. The midbrain contributes to the control of eye movements and the constriction of the iris. The medulla oblongata, or simply the medulla, is a center for life-sustaining activities. It regulates breathing, heart rate, and digestion, and it also contains the centers for reflexes. The spinal cord continues downward from the brain, enclosed in the vertebral column. It serves as the vital conduit between the brain and the peripheral nerves, carrying messages back and forth. But the spinal cord is also itself a center of reflex activity. Reflexes such as the knee jerk, as well as the reflexes for defecation and urination, are coordinated here without requiring conscious input from the brain. Thus, the nervous system is at once intricate and unified. Stimuli from the world and from within the body flow into the sensory nerves, are processed by the brain and spinal cord, and return as motor commands to produce action. Through its countless neurons and their pathways, the system sustains both the automatic rhythms of life, heartbeat, breathing, digestion, and the highest mental functions of human thought, memory, and speech. It is this system that makes the body aware, responsive, and alive. The heart is a muscular but hollow organ, weighing about 250 to 300 grams. It rests between the two lungs, slightly to the left of the body's midline, sitting upon the diaphragm. Roughly 2/3 of its mass lies on the left side, while 1/3 lies to the right. Anatomically, its boundaries extend upward to the level of the second costal cartilage, reach slightly to the right of the sternum, and on the left side span from the third to the fifth costal cartilages. Inside, the heart is divided into 4 chambers. The 2 upper chambers are the atria, the right atrium and the left atrium, and the 2 lower chambers are the ventricles, the right and the left ventricle. Valves are positioned between the atria and ventricles, as well as at the outlets of the ventricles, ensuring that blood flows forward in one direction only. The right atrium lies at the upper right posterior aspect of the heart. Its interior is relatively smooth, and it receives venous blood through 3 openings. The superior vena cava enters from above, the inferior vena cava from below, and the coronary sinus from the posterior wall. On its interatrial septum lies a depression known as the fossa ovalis, a remnant of fetal circulation. The atrioventricular opening between the right atrium and right ventricle leads downward into the ventricle. The right ventricle is located anteriorly and inferiorly on the right side. Its inner wall is irregular, with muscular ridges known as trabeculae carneae. Projecting from its surface are papillary muscles, which are attached to thin tendon-like strands called chordae tendineae. These connect to the valve leaflets between the right atrium and right ventricle, preventing them from inverting during contraction. From the upper part of the right ventricle arises the pulmonary trunk, which carries blood into the lungs for oxygenation. The left atrium lies posteriorly on the left side of the heart, with a smooth inner surface similar to that of the right atrium. It receives oxygenated blood from the lungs through 4 pulmonary veins. The left atrioventricular opening allows this blood to flow downward into the left ventricle. The left ventricle occupies the left anterior aspect of the heart. Its inner structure resembles that of the right ventricle, but its walls are about 3 times thicker. This is because the left ventricle must pump blood into the aorta, sending it throughout the entire body, whereas the right ventricle pumps only to the lungs. The lungs, paired and conical in shape, are the principal organs of respiration. They are situated within the thoracic cavity on either side of the heart. Each lung is spongy and elastic, reddish-brown in color, and light enough to float in water. The apex of each lung rises into the thoracic inlet, while the base rests upon the diaphragm. The right lung is slightly larger and heavier than the left. It is divided into 3 lobes, while the left has only 2. Each lung measures about 25 centimeters in height and weighs between 500 and 650 grams. Within them branch the bronchial tree, bronchi and bronchioles, ending in clusters of alveoli. Intertwined with them are branches of the pulmonary arteries and veins, ensuring intimate contact between air and blood. The function of the lungs is vital. While the nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, and bronchi serve as the airways that bring air in and out, it is the lungs themselves that perform the essential exchange. Here, oxygen from inhaled air passes into the bloodstream, while carbon dioxide from the blood diffuses outward to be exhaled. This gas exchange is the foundation of life, sustaining every tissue of the body. The spleen, sometimes called the lean in older texts, lies tucked between the diaphragm and the left kidney. It is a rounded, spongy organ, purple in colour because of its rich blood supply. In size, it measures about 10 to 12 centimetres in length, 6 to 8 in width, and weighs between 80 and 150 grams. Functionally, the spleen is both a producer of lymphocytes and a destroyer of worn-out red blood cells. Its convex surface, pressed against the diaphragm, is known as the diaphragmatic surface, while the concave side faces the left kidney and the stomach. There it presents the renal surface, which molds to the kidney, and the gastric surface, which rests against the stomach's fundus and body. The liver, by contrast, is the body's largest internal organ. In the adult, it weighs about 1.5 kilograms and sits high on the right side of the abdominal cavity, just beneath the diaphragm. Its surface is normally smooth, with a reddish hue, but disease alters its appearance. When fat accumulates from excessive alcohol intake, the liver becomes enlarged and yellow. In advanced cirrhosis, the organ shrinks and its once smooth surface turns nodular. The liver is central to human life in the same way the brain governs thought, and the heart governs circulation. It synthesizes, stores, transforms, breaks down, detoxifies, and excretes countless substances needed for survival. It manufactures proteins, including clotting factors essential for blood coagulation. It serves as the body's main detoxification center, chemically modifying drugs and toxins by oxidation, reduction, methylation, acetylation, and esterification so that they can be excreted. It processes harmful byproducts of metabolism, such as ammonia produced during protein breakdown, converting it into urea to prevent toxic accumulation. Without this, severe liver failure can lead to hepatic coma. The liver also regulates carbohydrate metabolism. Glucose absorbed from food is converted into glycogen and stored in liver cells, then released back into the bloodstream when energy demands rise. In this way, the liver functions as the body's energy reservoir. It produces bile, between 600 and 1,000 milliliters per day, which is secreted into the biliary system. Bile aids the digestion and absorption of fats and also serves as a route for excreting various substances. The liver helps maintain hormonal balance, stores essential vitamins and minerals, and acts as a blood reservoir. Fat-soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, and K, as well as vitamin B12, are stored here, often in amounts sufficient to sustain the body for months. Iron, stored in the form of ferritin, is present in greater amounts in the liver than in the circulating blood. Normally about 10% of the total blood volume, roughly 450 milliliters, is held within the liver. Because it can expand or contract, the liver can buffer the blood supply, accepting excess blood when volume is high and releasing it when volume is low. Finally, the liver plays a defensive role. Its Kupffer cells act as phagocytes, filtering bacteria and debris from the portal blood coming from the intestines. This explains why, despite the heavy bacterial load in intestinal circulation, bacteria rarely enter the systemic bloodstream. Almost all are trapped and destroyed in the liver. Beneath the liver lies the gallbladder, or cholecyst. It is a pear-shaped sac nestled in a fossa on the underside of the liver. Its broad fundus projects forward beneath the right costal margin, while its neck narrows into the cystic duct. This duct joins the hepatic duct from the liver to form the common bile duct, which travels through the hepatoduodenal ligament and joins the pancreatic duct to open into the duodenum at the major duodenal papilla. The gallbladder is attached superiorly to the liver by connective tissue, while its inferior surface is covered by peritoneum. On average, it measures about 7 centimeters in length, 4 in width, and has a capacity of around 70 cubic centimeters. The gallbladder stores and concentrates bile. While the liver secretes over 1 liter of bile each day, the gallbladder concentrates it down to about 50 to 60 milliliters. Its mucosal lining is thrown into fine ridges, forming a lattice-like pattern, and also secretes mucus. The cystic duct itself is about 3 centimeters long, while the common bile duct is nearly 7 centimeters. This compact but vital organ ensures that bile is delivered into the intestine when needed for digestion. The stomach is a hollow, pouch-like organ located in the upper left region of the abdominal cavity, just below the diaphragm, between the liver and the spleen. Though made of muscle, its interior is lined with glands that produce gastric juice, enabling it to both store food and initiate digestion, particularly the breakdown of proteins, before passing the contents into the small intestine. Its capacity ranges from about 1 to 2.5 liters, and its walls are remarkably elastic. This elasticity is due to 3 distinct layers of muscle fibers running in different directions: circular, longitudinal, and oblique, working together to churn and propel food. In shape, the stomach is often described as horn-shaped or resembling the letter J. The entry point where it connects with the esophagus is the cardiac part. Just above this lies the rounded fundus. Below the fundus is the body, the main portion of the stomach. Toward the right, the body narrows into the pyloric part, which connects to the duodenum. The terminal passage, called the pyloric canal, is controlled by the pyloric sphincter, regulating the flow of partially digested food. Along its surface are 2 curvatures: the lesser curvature, a short concave border on the right, and the greater curvature, a longer convex border on the left. Inside, the mucosal surface is thrown into folds called gastric rugae, which allow the stomach to expand as it fills. The stomach lies roughly at the level of the 10th thoracic to the 2nd lumbar vertebrae. Its lesser curvature rests against the liver, its fundus presses upward against the diaphragm, and its greater curvature makes contact with the transverse colon. It is anchored in place by the diaphragm, the esophageal hiatus, and surrounding peritoneal attachments. Within its mucosa are numerous gastric glands. Chief cells secrete pepsinogen, parietal cells secrete hydrochloric acid, and mucous neck cells produce protective mucus. The balance of these secretions is vital. Disruption may erode the stomach wall, leading to gastric ulcers. Behind the stomach lies the pancreas, a long slender gland about 15 centimeters in length, extending horizontally between the duodenum and the spleen. Running through its center is the pancreatic duct, which opens into the duodenum at the major duodenal papilla. The pancreas has both exocrine and endocrine functions. Its exocrine portion secretes pancreatic juice, a clear alkaline fluid averaging about 700 milliliters per day. This fluid neutralizes the acidic chyme from the stomach and contains enzymes that digest proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Scattered within the pancreas are clusters of endocrine tissue called the islets of Langerhans, which make up about 1 to 2% of its volume. The islets contain 2 primary cell types: alpha cells, which secrete glucagon, and beta cells, which secrete insulin. Insulin promotes the conversion of glucose into glycogen, facilitates glucose oxidation, and helps channel excess energy into fat storage. When insulin secretion is deficient, blood glucose rises and sugar appears in the urine, a condition known as diabetes mellitus. The kidneys, one on each side, are bean-shaped organs located along the posterior abdominal wall, beside the vertebral column, from the level of the 12th thoracic to the 3rd lumbar vertebra. Each kidney is about 10 centimeters long, 5 centimeters wide, 4 centimeters thick, and weighs about 130 grams. The left kidney lies slightly higher than the right, since the right is pressed down by the large mass of the liver. Sitting atop each kidney are the adrenal glands, which share a common fatty capsule with the kidneys. Externally, the kidney has a convex lateral border and a concave medial border. At the medial border lies the hilum, the gateway where blood vessels, nerves, and the ureter enter and leave. Internally, each kidney contains about 1 million nephrons, the microscopic functional units. Each nephron begins with a round structure called the renal corpuscle, which contains the glomerulus, a tuft of capillaries for filtering blood. From here extends a long, winding tubule, the renal tubule, which eventually joins with other tubules to form collecting ducts. These ducts converge and drain into the renal pelvis, the funnel-shaped basin that leads to the ureter. Together, the stomach, pancreas, and kidneys illustrate the integration of digestion, metabolism, and excretion. The stomach stores and initiates the breakdown of food. The pancreas secretes both digestive enzymes and hormones essential for blood sugar control, and the kidneys filter the blood, removing waste while conserving what the body needs. Each organ works in harmony, sustaining the body's balance and life itself.